a fur-covered trout, three-legged chick, two-headed baby, a jackalope, and a Fiji mermaid. Real or fake?
Check it out.
Hey everybody, it's Curtis. So glad to be back. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of my personal favorite topics. The first one is Sideshow, but most specifically Sideshow Gaffs. Now, for those of you who don't know, a Sideshow Gaff is actually something that was once advertised as being real, and then throughout the years it kind of became realized that they were fakes. So today we're going to be talking about a few of those. The first one here is actually pretty famous. It's called a fur-bearing trout. Now this has some folklore behind it, but first off, just take a look at that. Is that not like one of the funniest looking things you've ever seen? Imagine walking down a hallway and seeing this. It would sure stop you in your tracks. So this actually came out of Icelandic folklore in the 17th century or so, and it was later called the shaggy trout of Iceland. The earliest known American publication dates for this would be in 1929 in a Montana wildlife magazine. But I want to show you a few up-close features of this because there are two things that I just think are so funny that you need to see. The first is going to be the head, which I think is just hysterical. It just popping out right there. Now what they would do, obviously, would be to take the taxidermy of a fish and then just cover it in this in this fake fur. He also has little tiny fins right there, and then of course the large fin here. In terms of taxidermy gaffs, this is definitely one of the favorites and one of the most used throughout the years, and they come in all sorts of different sizes, everything from this size all the way up to one's 4 feet long. The next one I want to talk about is probably the most famous one up here, and that would be called the jackalope, which I'm sure most people know is supposed to be a combination of a jackrabbit and an antelope. Although, fun fact, the horns up here are actually, most of the time, not antelope, they are deer. This first became popular in the 1920s, like really popular here in the States. But a fun fact is, in the 13th century, there was actually a Persian work of art, I'm sorry, not a work of art, a document that depicts a mythical rabbit with one horn, kind of like a unicorn, but they depict it as a real animal. And this stayed in their folklore until about the 18th century. Now, by the 18th century, everybody had kind of figured out that these weren't real and that they were, indeed fakes. But through the 13th through the 18th century, the real jackalope in this Persian work evolved. He went from having one horn to 2 horns and all sorts of different things. But like I said, by the 18th century, everything had kind of been discarded as gaff, fake, something like that. But still extremely popular, especially in oddities, conventions, and on people's walls around the world. Another one I do want to show is this guy, this tiny chicklet, or tiny chick. And the reason that I like to show this is because a lot of people buy these, especially at oddities shows and in some oddity shops around the world, thinking that they are real. And Ripley's only displays real things unless we otherwise note them. And unfortunately, this is one of those pieces that most of the time is not real. So we do recommend that if you're going to buy something like this, really check it out. And I'm going to set this down and kind of zoom in on what's wrong with this one. Obviously, the main factor here is the fact that it has 3 legs. You can see the 2 up front there, and then the 1 back here in the back. Now, if you really look at the 1 back here in the back, you can even start to see the seam. But if you really go in there, you're actually going to see a separation between this leg and the rest of the body. Unfortunately, that does show that it's a gaff or a fake. But like I said, it still looks very cool and makes a great mantelpiece. But definitely don't want to walk into your average store, pick one of these up, and think that it's real right off the bat. Do your homework to make sure that what you got is something real and not just one of those pretty common Sideshow gaffs. It's also very common for them to have 2 heads. Now, before we deal with the most famous sideshow gaff of all time, I do want to quickly mention our two-headed baby here. So these are actually known in the sideshow community as Pickle Punks. That's what they were originally called when it comes to two-headed babies or babies with deformities. Now, these were kind of half shown in sideshows, but also very useful in the medical field. Obviously, this type of stuff needs to be studied, especially by doctors. So some sideshows would display this as a two-headed baby. You'd have to pay the extra quarter to go around the corner in order to see this, usually in a jar or a container of some kind. But then as things progressed and these became used for more medical uses, people would take castings of them and then be able to make copies just like this out of wax, where they could then still put them in a jar or a container, advertise them as quote-unquote real, and it allowed them to reap the benefits of having a pickled punk without actually having to have one. They could make this look real enough that people would buy it. Now, last but not least, the one that I want to jump into, and one that most of you Ripley fans are, I'm sure, familiar with, is going to be the Fiji Mermaid. Now, this is my favorite taxidermy gaff, and obviously the arguably the most popular. And I am going to get some close-up shots of this in a minute. It is terrifying to look at. What is it supposedly? Well, this was actually premiered by P.T. Barnum as the missing link between man and mermaid. It was supposed to be found near the Fiji Islands. And that's exactly how he advertised it. He advertised it, like I said, as the missing link between man and mermaid, but purposely made it kind of scary. We all think of mermaids as beautiful creatures. It was advertised as 100% real, and the original was actually lost, more than likely in one of P.T. Barnum's fires that he had at his museums, but several were made in the exact same style. So what is it exactly? It is a taxidermied monkey top with a taxidermied fish bottom. Now, I do want to explain a couple of the differences really between P.T. Barnum and Robert Ripley as I get a couple of close-ups of this. So, P.T. Barnum advertised this piece as real. And that really is the difference between P.T. Barnum and Robert Ripley. Basically, P.T. Barnum, for the extra quarter, you could come in, you could see the missing link between man and mermaid, and it was supposed to be this thing that was going to change the world. And this is what it was, the Fiji Mermaid. Obviously, like I said, the original was lost, more than likely destroyed in Barnum's original fire. But several copies were made in the exact same style. Ripley got a hold of one of these in his later years and advertised it exactly as that, a sideshow gaff. In fact, he called it the world's most famous sideshow gaff because it was most believed by most people. So much so that he did several cartoons on it, one of which is right here. But it basically talks about the original Fiji Mermaid, the fake that fooled Europeans for centuries, and includes his sketch of the Fiji Mermaid. But it was Robert Ripley's one of his favorite pieces as well because of how popular of a sideshow gaff it was. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this small but fun talk about sideshow galleries and some of the gaffs. It's one of my favorite subjects, so I really do hope we get to come back and jump into this some more at a later date. But until then,